Okay. Hello, my name is Alan Relvan Camilo, and I'm here to represent SMAN 1 Garut, and I will be the second speaker of SMAN 1 Garut. The motion is this House supports the use of military style of education to develop Pancawulya character and values among high school students. Now, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. By the end of this debate, we will prove to you panels and proposition side of the House that military style to develop Pancawulya character among high school students is a bad idea and should not be done to ensure a friendly and fitting for studying environment for students. Now, I will go to my opening line, which is now argumentation as well as proof on later on, and conclude everything to prove you to why it is a bad idea. Now, let's just write things out. Now, what is Pancawulya and Pancawulya character? Pancawulya stands for Cager, Bager, Bener, Pinter, Singer, which comes from the Sundanese language. Now, meaning healthy, kind, smart, skilled, and panel. Now, I just want to clear things up and have a heads up. Our side of the House doesn't actually want to remove Pancawulya education. We just want it to be implemented correctly without any suppression. Now, our side of the House supports the idea of implementing this type of education, Pancawulya education, values among high school students. There's nothing wrong with it, and it serves not just as a motto, but actual education, which is deemed as important to implement towards anyone. Now, it helps with development, education, health, etc. But we, as the opposition side of the House, proudly refuse to do this implementation of Pancawulya with the usage of military-style education. Now, military-style education stems from the soldiers of the military who uses their ways into spreading education. Now, it serves as to mimic and practice on how it is to learn under the military ways such as authoritarian, mimic, extreme physicality, and even violence. Now, in this case, using military ways to spread Pancawulya education, we proudly oppose the idea under these reasons. Now, first of all, I don't want to live in a world where I can study but with a gun directed to my head and being shouted. Now, military style of education for sure is useful. I mean, who would argue with that? But it is actually useful for people to actually want to be a soldier. We, as the opposition side of the House, argues that it is actually immoral and unfit for the military to implement their ways for high school students. Now, let's take an example. For example, what actually happened when this was implemented. Some schools invite the military to go and teach about Pancawulya in their ways, but what they did to implement it is, they make it such as like it was a punishment. Basically, freshman kids are basically forced into a field under the bright sun. The military, by their ways, forced to listen to their materials about Pancawulya in the middle of the day with the sun beaming into hundreds of freshman students. Now, this resulted in many people becoming unfocused, overwhelmed, fatigued, or even fainted because of the condition that the military forced them into. Now, what we remember it is actually high school students. Physicality may vary, and no one is actually the same. Some people could handle it, and a lot of people couldn't. Now, if we implement this military ways, we could see worse scenarios than this because of the physicality that is demanded in the military ways. Now, imagine a military style education where it is to be implemented. It is going to be a lot worse. Now, imagine how it is to wake up as the military, for example. It may look like this. Now, for example, waking up at 3 a.m. while being shouted, having to do your morning routine in extreme precision and duress, having limited time to eat and limited socializing and expression, being shouted when you are doing something wrong, and being punished such as push-ups, sit-ups, running laps, carrying heavy weights, and etc. And having a limited time to recover from that and having a tight schedule. We give you this. Yes, okay, it is good to actually have that, but it is actually only if it was actually people who actually chose to be, for example, the National Guard of this nation, such as soldiers. Now, but it would actually be so ridiculous to implement this for students. I mean, imagine if high school students were to implement this, as I said before. Now, it would definitely limit and worsen the education of the military style of education were to be implemented. Now, such as they have no time to express themselves with their creativity and socialization because of the suppression and extreme discipline they have to endure. This is awful for students who actually have to be creative. They're supposed to be free with a good amount of socialization to actually help them into everyday life in school or outside. Now, in the future, it would actually help them. In high school, nobody is the same. Physicality of everyone is different. It would actually be near impossible to classify all of the students to becoming into one person. if the militarian ways were to be implemented, they would classify students as one, as they would put students under the many physical exercises and stress that would be unfit for themselves. People be sick, people could be passing out just because of the military style of education. Now, this is bad because of why? Because it is actually immoral to just classify many students, just to classify them as into one. Now, and then after that, if we put them into, like, classify them as into one, it would actually be more inhuman to put them into these exercises. It is actually because it is actually simply inhumane to do so, because nobody is the same. No, people have different physics and all that. Now, okay, let's just say this was implemented. Okay, let's just say if this was implemented, and let's just say, okay, for example, I'll give you this. It is implemented, they would actually have, for example, extreme discipline, but they wouldn't actually be creative. So they wouldn't actually be creative or maybe socially expressive. We would actually have robots, not students. Now, okay. Second, mistake is really important to study now. But now, if military style of education was to be implemented, the only mistake was to implement it in the first place. Now, under military style of education, we would have no place to grow as a student. Now, we would be suppressed and programmed to a T. Now, we would have no place for our voice to grow and express ourselves now, because it is its authoritarian nature. Now, we would have no place to criticize them. It is impossible. This could open up a way of too many bad things. For example, bullying, force of favors, etc. Because it's the military. We can't really do anything about it because, you know, they're military. We are students and they are the military. Now, what we could do is just to sit there, take it like a soldier, not a student. Now, this could lead into the unfocus of learning itself because of the stress and everything that would be doomed the Pancawulya material, and because it wouldn't help at all. Now, our side of the house proved to you on why the implementation of Pancawulya material is a bad idea, and what if it were to be implemented by military style. What we could do to implement Pancawulya material is we could bring socialization and education by teachers and many important people in the environment. It doesn't actually have to be military style or type with punishment and suppression without actually ensuring the focus on Pancawulya. It could be actually bring up in the friendly one way to ensure a focus on the values of Pancawulya itself, like in a classroom, Pancawulya being a motto and value to the high school students, which is why we are proud to stay here to stand today with as a opposition.